Yes, ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for joining us for the UFC 275 preview show here on INC Live. My name is Karl Bainbridge and I am joined by the man on the right-hand side of my screen. He is the Simon to my Garfunkel. He is the Hall to my Oates. It's John Martian. John, thank you very much for joining us.
What's up, Carl? What's up, INC Live listeners? Good to be back as always. Been a while since we had our last pay-per-view, but as always, we're here to break down these pay-per-view fights, so I'm excited to do it as always. Good to be back, Carl.
And it promises to be a really intriguing card as well, because obviously it's going to be a brand new location for the UFC in terms of the pay-per-views. We're still dealing with the fallout from UFC 274, which we'll get into in just a moment's time. If you would like to get involved with the show though, try and contact us, give us any sort of positive feedback, you can do so. You can follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/IN Cagefighting. And if you like us enough that you're willing to support and donate to the channel, you can do so on our Patreon page. It's patreon.com/It's Not Cagefighting. And if you would like to know what John's up to over his weeks off, John, where's the best place to go?
You can follow me on Twitter at UFO_UFC, UFO_UFC, and you can find the Martian MMA, Martian and Aussie podcast if you search on YouTube, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, or iTunes, or Spotify, excuse me, the last one. Just search up Martian MMA and you'll find me there.
And I have to say, John does a breakdown of every single UFC fight on every single card, and most of the time you get a lot of them right, John.
Yeah, this year hasn't been the greatest year with predictions, but yeah, breaking down every fight. For instance, we're going to talk about the 5 main fight cards in detail here. If you're interested in the 8 prelim fights, swing over to my channel later in the week and I'll have a video uploaded talking about them.
Before we get to that though, we need to discuss what happened at UFC 274. It's hard to believe, John, it feels like an absolute age ago that we were talking
Yeah, I was
about
about to
Charles
say,
Oliveira.
what pay-per-view was that? I forget.
It's been that long ago. It just feels like 1 week is like a month in like the MMA world, it feels like. Obviously, we had Charles Oliveira versus Justin Gaethje, which was expected to be a lightweight title fight. Of course, there was the fallout surrounding the main event, Charles Oliveira becoming the first ever UFC champion to miss weight on the scales.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's what happened. I mean, there was a lot of different accounts of what went on throughout the week about, the scale being off, and a lot of fighters did weigh in at like 155.5, 135.5. There was a lot of fighters weighing in like that. So who the hell really knows? I mean, to me, I don't really care about a half a pound. I mean, Charles Oliveira is still the champion. I mean, he knocked down Justin Gaethje, then choked him out. I mean, he is, clearly the best lightweight in the world right now. And he's still the champion to me. So they're gonna have the belt on the line in his next fight, but he's the champion, and I think most real fans know he's still the champ.
That's been a really interesting thing to see, because I could imagine a lot of other fighters, maybe people who are less popular than Charles, getting a lot more backlash for this weight miss. But because Charles is quite a well-received guy, people enjoy his fighting style, he comes across quite likable, it's almost as if people have sort of retconned that weight miss and is still treating him as the champion regardless.
Oh, for sure. If it was Khabib, they would be going, his whole career has been a fraud. I knew it all along. He's been a fraud all along. But no, yeah, because Charles is more likable. People are kind of letting it slide. The week of, people were kind of, were bitching, and then he silenced everybody by, finishing Gaethje in the first round. And to me, like I said, it's a half a pound. Come on, guys. I mean, he cut like 20 pounds that day or something. He didn't cut one extra half pound. He made it so close. But interesting controversy regardless. It's fun to talk about.
Yeah. Do you dare to talk about one of your big predictions that you got right on the 274 preview show? We got a lot of people criticizing us when we said Carla Esparza was going to beat Rose Namajunas, and here she sits, UFC strawweight champion.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to do a full victory lap about this one just because the fight was
such a bad fight.
So atrocious. So atrocious. Literally one of the worst fights in UFC history. And, I'm not even confident that Carla won. I mean, after the first round, like, people were trying to score it. They were scoring live. Oh, it's 2-2, 1-1. Who the fuck knew what the score was? I mean, there was no way to know what the score was going to be in that fight. It was so mind-numbingly boring that I don't even want to pay attention for 5 minutes to score the round. So, sure, Carla got her hand raised. That's good to see. I mean, she was the underdog, so I mean, it's nice to see the underdog get the victory. But I mean, I'm not positive she won. I'm not rewatching the fight. Now, I don't think anybody will ever rewatch that fight, but yeah, it's nice to see Carla. And honestly, I feel like on the prediction show, I might have predicted the exact rounds that she was going to win. I think I said she was going to win 48-47, and I said she will win the first two and the fourth round, which is technically what she did win. So, but like I said, I'm not going to do. I can't, claim myself as Mystic Mac over here saying I thought it was going to be a staring contest of the most boring fight in UFC history. So.
The one thing it has done, though, is had a major factor on one of the fights that will be taking place on 275, some of the implications that could come for the winner of that fight. And that brings us on to 275. Now, we mentioned at the start of the show, it's a bit of an intriguing one for the UFC. It's their fifth event that's taken place in Singapore. The last time we went there was the classic between Damian Maia and Ben Askren back in 2019. But it's the first time they've ever held a pay-per-view there. Now, we've heard the UFC wanting to try and court the Asian market for a long, long time. Obviously, they made big inroads into China, obviously with like Weili becoming such a big success. And also we got the road to the UFC almost sort of side piece, which is going to be going alongside this event. But why in particular do you think they've chosen Singapore as the location over, say, China or Korea or Japan?
Well, I think Singapore English is the official language in Singapore, or maybe not the official language, but I'm pretty sure it's the most commonly spoken language there. Do you know that for a fact, or am
I
I
don't
making
know
that
that
up?
for a fact, I'm afraid.
I'm pretty sure that's true. Well, I'll look it up in a second, or you can type it in now, Carl. But I'm pretty sure that is the case. Like, I'm pretty sure like their street signs and everything are in English, and I think they're just a little bit more of like a Western, Asian country with like their influence and everything. So I think it'd be a little easier to infiltrate in terms of, Japan or South Korea. And then COVID is still kind of a thing, so maybe this is just easier to do with COVID. And like the UFC, they always have some financial ties. Like with the Fight Island, I mean, they were getting paid through the nose by the what was it, the UAE government or wherever that was. I mean, they were getting paid a ton of money to have those events, and I'm sure there's some sort of deal in place with Singapore as well, where the UFC, the government there or whatever is making it worthwhile for the UFC to travel there.
Do you think that One Championship may be a bit of a factor as well? Because obviously, One, over the past couple of months, have announced that they've got their deal with Amazon. They're going to be broadcasting a lot of events in America over the next couple of months. It just feels a little bit convenient that they try and make inroads into the UFC's market in America, and they think, okay, we're going to do the same thing to you.
Yeah, that is possible, but I mean, and ONE FC doesn't even have a market. Come on, nobody watches that shit. I mean, even in Asia, they fake all their viewership numbers. Chai Tree or whatever is the cringiest, pathological liar I've ever seen in combat sports. So, I mean, that promotion sucks. I won't even. I mean, their kickboxing, their Muay Thai is pretty good, but their MMA is absolutely terrible. So I don't really think it's that much of a factor.
I would say something, but we have been copyright struck by One Championship on the main channel, so I have to be
Whoa,
very,
whoa,
very
whoa.
careful. One thing that I have noticed in regards to 275 before we talk about the prelims, you mentioned 274 where you felt it was quite a strange card in that we had two title fights, the big marquee matchup, and then it was a big fall off in quality from Ferguson versus Chandler through to the rest of the card. And I feel we've got a similar situation this time around. Again, two title fights, Zhang Weili versus Joanna, which a lot of people expect to be that sort of big. That's worthy of being a 5-round fight night main event, in my opinion. And then again, a big drop off afterwards. Is this the new market for the UFC? Is this the way that they're going to be approaching these cards from now on?
It's possible, but I'll actually say that the drop off is pretty insignificant actually. I mean, I think it's possible the skill level in the first two fights is higher than the two women's fights, honestly. Um, because I mean, I'm really interested to see Jack Della. I'm really interested to see Kate Bontorin. That's a really good matchup. I mean, I think Kate Bontorin is a matchup that should be entertaining no matter who wins. The Jack Della fight will only be entertaining if he wins.
Mm.
Obviously, Emeev is one of the most boring fighters ever, so no one wants to see that. But they're kind of setting up Jack as like a prospect spot on the main card. So I think I'm fine with the main card ordering. Obviously, we have to analyze another Shevchenko fight, which for all you listeners out there, I am sorry. Carl, what is this? Like, this is like our fourth or fifth fight that we're analyzing for this woman. I mean, man, getting exhausting. It might be like, yeah, I think it's the fourth we've done.
We'll
Maybe
be
the fifth.
we'll be getting to that in a lot more detail later on in the show. For now, though, we're going to be talking about the prelims, which will be broadcast on ESPN and on Fight Pass. You can see those on our screen right now. As you would come to expect, given the location, we've got a lot of Asian talent, which is on there, a lot of Australian talent as well. I think for me, one of the big sort of intriguing elements of the prelims, which stands out for me, is Andre Fiallo. This is going to be his 7th fight in the past 12 months and his 4th in the UFC. Now, obviously, it's good to see a big company man. He's wanted to try and get as many fights as he can to, I believe he's on a 4-fight contract, and that will be improved if he gets renewed by the UFC. But is this amount of activity a little bit dangerous for him?
I would say so, yeah, because I mean, the Baeza fight earlier this year, I mean, he was getting tagged a little bit in that fight, kind of a comeback knockout. Then he fought like 3 weeks turnaround, I think, which is, a really quick turnaround. And then he fought a lower level guy in there, maybe got hit with a punch or two, but then was able to knock him out. So it's not like he's taking an insane amount of damage, but I mean, the dude is active. You got to give him credit. I mean, he's knocking people out. Kind of got a little Chris Curtis vibes to him, maybe. And I'm a little upset though because if they did Andre Fiallo versus Jack Della, that would have been an amazing striking boxing fight where these dudes would have just boxed it out, and that would have been a perfect fight to kick off the main card. But both of those guys are being matched up against like these snooze fest fighters like Jake Matthews and Ramazan Emeev that it just makes the matchups a lot less interesting. It's like either the fun fighter will win or the boring fighter will win, while we could have like a fun versus fun type of matchup. But yeah, nice to see Andre staying active. He's probably cashing a lot of checks too.
I have a little bit more time for Jake Matthews than maybe what you do. I mean, I remember the match he had with the Leech, which I thought was pretty fun.
Yeah, I thought it was fun when he was getting his eyes gouged out, but like not much else was fun about that one.
What is fun for you on the prelims, however? Brendan Allen's going to be back in action. He's taking on Jacob Malkoun. I feel like Brendan Allen's one of those guys who, every time it looks like he's on the verge of making a breakthrough and maybe saying, yeah, he's finally put it all together and he might be like a top 15 guy, there's always some sort of knockback to just sort of put him back into this sort of mixing pot of middleweight contenders.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty accurate. I like Brendan Allen. I don't know if he's one of my boys quite yet, but he's. I mean, looking at these prelims, first of all, they're weak. They're weak, Carl. I mean, especially the first few fights. Some fighters that you haven't heard of too much. I mean, like you said, Fialho is cool, but Danilo Baccarel is cool, Sungwoo Choi is cool, but like the matchups aren't exactly exciting. Same with Brendan Allen. He's a cool fighter, but he's fighting a rather one-dimensional wrestler in Malkoun, which is a little hard to get excited about. But to give Brendan a little defense here, I mean, the only fight that he lost that was like, I wouldn't even say, I don't think either is a bad loss. I mean, Strickland and Chris Curtis, both good fighters. But Strickland, that was, really early on in his UFC career, and he was already getting Strickland. I mean, the odds were close for that one, but I was pretty confident in Strickland there. And then he was a big favorite over Chris Curtis, and he did lose that fight. But as we all know, Chris Curtis is a good fighter, so I still have high hopes for him. I mean, I still think he is a good fighter with some promise. But he also did have that close round against Sam Alvey in his last fight, which is not good. So, man, but these prelims are pretty weak, don't you think so, Carl?
They're not the best prelims that I've seen. I think that the UFC traditionally, I think you get the strong prelims when it comes around sort of October, November, December time. I feel like the UFC properly backload their events for the final quarter of the year. I think they do that for monetary reasons. But when you get around to the sort of like summertime, and especially when you're building up to International Fight Week, they do scrimp a lot. And I feel like there's a lot of this going on. You mentioned before, like, the poor quality of some of the proper Fight Pass prelims, like the first 2 fights on the main card. It's quite fascinating to see that sort of juxtaposition of having a eagerly anticipated rematch, arguably a rematch of the greatest women's fight of all time, and a women's flyweight title bout, which a lot of people are thinking could be more competitive than some give it credit for. And you contrast that with Na Liang and Silvana Juarez and Ramona Pascual versus Jocelyn Edwards.
Yeah, it's quite the contrast, honestly. But I mean, I do agree with what you're saying. They do tend to stack like certain cards, but you're forgetting July. They always forget they stack those early July cards, the pay-per-views. So maybe that's what they're doing. I mean, I understand they're getting Asian talent on this card because of the location, but it just so happens that the fights are pretty uncompelling as a result of that too. But there is the whatever they're calling it, road to the UFC. There's going to be 20 fights going on over the course of like 3 or 4 days or some shit like that. Some crazy amount of fights. So that'll be interesting to see play out.
That being said, though, I actually think Na Liang versus Silvana Juarez, that could be fun in sort of like a sloppy brawl way. Because these girls can throw.
For sure, yeah. Na Liang's first fight in the UFC is absolutely hilarious. You guys got to go watch that if you haven't already, or just rewatch it against Carnelossi. Watch that shit.
I love that fight. That was the first fight on the 261 card, so like the crowd were proper fired up for that one.
Yeah, but it's so funny to rewatch. I mean, there's one point where she is laying backwards with her eyes closed and just eating punches on her back, and the referee's like, "This is over."
You could tell it's early in the morning for you in Philly because you're proper like laying into everyone right now.
Yeah, right. I know. I have some hot takes on this card. I'm shitting on everybody across the board.
Well, here's somebody that you sort of teased that you're going to be criticizing a lot because he's fighting on the first fight of the main card. Emeev is going to be taking on Della Maddalena. Betting odds for this one, you can get Maddalena as a minus 135 favourite. Emeev comes in at plus 115. Now, this is a bit of a strange fight to open up the main card. Obviously, I get it from the context of Maddalena being Australian, relevant to the area, and obviously he's got a good winning streak going as well. I think it's something like 11 fights in a row. But as you mentioned before, Emeev, arguably one of the duller fighters on the roster, has a fighting style which Dana White has been openly critical about many times, not just for himself, but for other sort of wall and stall fighters. Bit of a strange fight, considering you want to fire up the audience tuning in. You want that sort of big all-action brawl, and instead we're getting this.
Yeah, I mean, this is really confusing matchmaking to me. I mean, this seems like an example of, oh, these two guys are available on this day, let's match them up. There really wasn't much thought into like how this matchup will prevail because Jack Della is, a slick southpaw boxer. Has been really fun to watch so far. Only one fight in the UFC, and then you have Emeev, who is, a boring orthodox, kind of, just leg humper or crotch sniffer. I mean, this dude just pushes you against the cage and holds you there the entire fight. He doesn't land hard strikes. He gets takedowns, but he doesn't do much with them. I don't think he has a finish in the UFC yet. Let's see. Yeah, he only decision wins in the UFC. And if you look at those wins, there are also some pretty unrecognizable names. So I mean, I've always been really underwhelmed with Ramazan Emeev. I actually bet against him. Got a little lucky with Danny Roberts in his last fight. But that loss has actually aged, way worse. I mean, we just saw Trinaldo make easy work of Danny Roberts, and Ramazan Emeev was really struggling there. So I mean, Jack Della, I'll be cheering for him. I think everybody in the world is going to be cheering for Jack Della here, unless you, for some reason, are betting on Emeev. But I mean, I hope Jack boxes him up because if Emeev wins the fight, it'll be in extremely boring fashion. And maybe the UFC is looking to get Emeev out of there. I mean, I think this is his 8th fight, so it's possible that he did a 4-fight contract, and a 4-fight contract, they're hoping he loses this one and they can just get him out of there. But also, if they were going with that strategy, they would have maybe gone with a fighter a little more proven than a guy with just one UFC fight. So I've got high hopes for Jack Della. And, I hope he's able to perform and win the fight this Saturday.
I think maybe they're hoping that Jack Della, based on his record with Eternal MMA and what we saw in the Contender Series and what we saw against Pete Rodriguez, I think they're hoping that, hey, this guy is able to get exciting matches out of nearly everyone. Let's see how good he is by trying to get an exciting match out of one of the duller fighters on the roster. And we're going to talk about Jack Della in a little bit more detail because obviously just one fight in the UFC, and that ended in the first round. How much can we read about this guy based on what we saw on his UFC debut? Because, yes, very clinical performance against Pete Rodriguez, first round knockout, pieced him up pretty much from the start during that fight. But Rodriguez took that fight on short notice. It was only his 5th pro fight of his career. Can we maybe be a little bit careful in maybe trying to build Jack a little bit too high based off that one fight?
Oh, for sure, yeah. I think the more indicative fight is the Ange Loosa fight on the Contender Series. That's an actual 15-minute fight where you really get to see his skill set overall. And I think that he's first of all an incredible boxer, good kicking game as well. So I mean, his striking I think doesn't need any work at all. I mean, it's really high level from what I'm seeing so far. It's just his grappling and maybe his cage craft, his footwork a little bit, but I don't think we've seen anything glaringly bad in that area. The worst moment we saw from him was in the Ange Loosa fight. He did get taken down in round 2. He got put in like a fully locked in arm triangle, but defended it, was able to get back up to his feet, and then got right back to outboxing Ange Loosa to the point where he didn't even lose the round. So he got taken down and was put in a really deep sub attempt, but he got right back up to his feet, started boxing him up again, and then won the round on all 3 judges' scorecards. So it shows that this guy is really active when he's on the feet, which is great for winning rounds, especially against Emeev, for instance. So let's say Emeev is taking him down. He's holding him against the cage for 3 or 4 minutes. The crowd is booing. Nothing is happening. And then in the last minute, Jack Della gets back up to his feet, lands, maybe 5, 10 punches in the last minute. He could steal that round back and, win this decision. And Emeev is tough. I think he will probably make it to a decision. It's going to be a fight where Jack lands a few punches. Emeev tries to clinch. We spend a minute or 2 against the cage, and then Jack finally gets off. And, I don't think Jack will win it super emphatically, but I think that, him being the much more damaging and offensive fighter should win him this fight.
Do you think there's maybe some questions over Jack's conditioning? Because he's had 11 wins, 10 of them have come in the distance. And the only fight that actually went the full 15 minutes was the fight on the Contender Series. And based on what I saw in that fight, I did think that Ange Loosa was coming on a little bit strong near the end of the fight. And I think maybe there is some questions over whether the guy's cardio is good enough.
Yeah, I don't really remember him coming on too much in round 3. Let me see. I mean, I think that yeah, I mean the stats say he still landed 15 more strikes that round. I mean, I think his cardio is looking good so far. I mean, but the thing is, he's going to be in a much more taxing type of grappling,
Yes.
clinching fight this one. So it's possible that he slows down more than expected. But I mean, he is the favorite. The better is, the market is respecting him out there. I mean, they're clearly showing that this guy has a promise because he's already a favorite over a tested guy like Emeev.
We've given Emeev a lot of criticism on this show for his fighting style, but he's managed to get 20 wins out of it. He was a champion in, I think, M1. So he's got a lot of credential behind him. So he can't be a bad fighter, even if his style isn't the most impressive. What would you say are Emeev's biggest strengths? What are the things to look out for and say, hey, he's going to win this fight and this is how?
I mean, I really struggle to say anything positive about this guy. Like I hate this guy's guts, but I mean he knows how to win fights. That's what I'll say is he knows how to win rounds, fights. He's been in a ton of 15-minute fights, and I think there's a lot less concern that he's gonna he's not gonna gas out. We know that we know that he's gonna be there for the full 15 minutes, looking to clinch and to wrestle. So I guess he's consistent is what I'll say.
Obviously, bearing in mind what's happened over the past couple of weeks, and in particular, I bring up sort of like the Holly Holm Ketlin Vieira fallout, where you had Holly with this big sort of wall and stall style strategy, and ended up losing the fight because Vieira was seen as being more active, making more intent to try and win the fight. Do you think this is maybe going to be a factor when it comes to this match? Like, can Emeev just rely on that sort of wall and stall strategy to win this?
Well, I mean, in his last fight, I mean, he probably should have won that fight, but just because, I mean, he's so boring and just no fun to watch. The judges, gave it to Roberts, and I mean, Roberts in that fight was just he was being aggressive. He was swinging and punches, but he was missing a lot of the time. But the judges thought that was good enough to give him the decision. So I mean, it's definitely live. Any fight that's going to the decision, you guys got to be, very unsure of what's going to happen because these judges lately are terrible, especially in Singapore. Who the hell knows what type of judges we're going to be getting there? Whether these guys have judged, MMA recently, we won't know until the fight starts and we get our first crazy split decision or something. So, you got to be wary of that.
Your heart's picking Maddalena, is your brain?
Yeah, yeah, I'll still pick Jack decision.
I just think there's too many question marks about Maddalena. I think his regional record is very impressive. I think he's looked very good there. But it's very hard for me to judge him as a bookmaker's favourite based off one UFC fight. So even though I share the sentiment with you, I don't want Emeev to win this fight because I do find his style boring. I think he's going to do enough to get it done. So I'm going to pick Emeev unanimous decision.
Nice to see us different on picks here. We'll see who's next or who's right next pay-per-view. I wonder if we'll disagree on the next fight too.
Well, this one's going to be very interesting, and in my opinion, this fight should have opened up the card because flyweights are in action, and it's Rogerio Bontorin who's taking on Manel Kape. Betting odds for this one, you can get Manel as a minus 220 favourite. Bontorin comes in at plus 180. And I have to say, it's good to see the flyweights getting a main card showcase. Normally, they're sort of restricted to sort of like the fight nights or pay-per-view prelims, so it's good to see two exciting guys being showcased to the masses and saying, hey, you're going to be the appetizer to the main course.
Yeah, I think this is yeah, I thought for some reason maybe the Kaikar France and Bontorin fight was on the main card. It wasn't, but the Bontorin and Schnell fight was definitely on a
I
pay-per-view
think that
main
was a
card.
last minute addition. I think one of the fights fell through and he added Schmel and Bontorin.
Yeah, that is possible. But I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, these guys deserve it. I mean, they've produced entertaining fights pretty consistently. Bontorin may be on a little less exciting side just because he does like to grapple. He does like to mix in takedowns. He's good at taking people's backs. So he is not the most consistently exciting guy, but he can box. He's a pretty entertaining guy. But Cop is just nonstop fireworks. I mean, this dude throws hammers for punches. His last fight against Zumagulov was crazy. I mean, it was just a one-round fight. It only lasted 3 or 4 minutes, but it was just hectic the entire time. Flying knee knockout over O'Day Osborne. Two really close decisions over Pantoja and Nicolau. The Nicolau one probably should have went his way. So, I mean, Cop is really good. He came over in the UFC pretty recently, but has really proved himself. And I mean, he's just a consistent action fighter. He's hard to take down. He's extremely durable. I mean, this dude is insanely durable. Watch some of the punches that Zumagulov landed on this guy, and he just walked right through them. So I'm really excited to see this matchup. I'll let you give your thoughts on it before I give my full thoughts on the
And it's
matchup.
been a good rebound as well for Manel because obviously the guy came in, I think he was the Ryzen Bantamweight champion, something like that. A lot of fanfare given Pantoja on his UFC debut, which is a sign of how highly they rated him. But those first two fights happened, and a lot of people thought, well, he's just been a little bit too tepid. He's relying too much on counter striking, waiting for the perfect punch. And he ended up losing those fights, arguably through inactivity. I agree with you. Personally, I thought he should have got the win over Nicolau. And then since then, I think he's taken a lot of that criticism on board, and we've seen a much more aggressive, clinical Manel Kape. We saw that with the O.D. Osborne fight, and we saw that when he fought Zulgas, which was a very competitive fight to start off with, and then just that big power punch, and Bob's your uncle. He ends up winning the fight, and it's very rare you see a flyweight carrying that much power. I'll probably say it's Manel and Figueiredo that have that sort of one-shot stopping power.
Yeah, this dude's a crazy athlete, and I feel like he was like a backup for like a Figueiredo Moreno fight or something, or Figueiredo Perez or some shit. Like Cop was like on standby to make weight in case he had to fill in for that. So yeah, they had really high expectations for this guy coming in. And that's why they matched him up with Pantoja. And I don't think he has completely corrected that problem, though, because in the O'Day fight, I remember that fight, like nothing happening in that round. And then all of a sudden, Cop threw the flying knee. Same thing with Zumagulov. He kind of let Zumagulov start fast. And then he, hit him with a few leg kicks and then knocked him out. So I feel like there still is some of that lingering issue where he lets the fight come to him a little bit too much. He needs to be the one really setting the tempo.
And when he does set the tempo and when he does go forward, in my opinion, I know he's a lightning quick counter striker, and that's his sort of like bread and butter. But I think when we've seen him go forward, we've seen better results from it.
Definitely. And it's going to be a battle, I think, of takedown defense here because, in my opinion, Bontorin is not going to want to stand with him for too long. I think he is at a speed disadvantage, possibly a power disadvantage as well. And with how durable Kape is, I mean, it's just going to be a tough task for Bontorin to outstrike him over the 15 minutes. So I think Bontorin's going to have to mix in his grappling. But Kape has not been an easy guy to take down. Even Pantoja and Nicolau had trouble taking him down, and I think he's steadily improving that. I think he might be training at AKA or something. I don't really put a whole lot of stock into that gym nowadays, but um, I think he's gonna have trouble, holding Cop down. And Bontorin also does kind of slow down as the fight goes. Royval fight, his last fight, he did gas out in that last round and lose that round three pretty emphatically. So I just feel like Cop has a lot of athletic advantages here, speed, durability, probably cardio as well. I think he's the better striker, and he just really needs to let his strikes go here, and he can win the fight. So I think the odds are about right here with him being like a 2-1 favorite, and I'll probably be picking him. It's just a matter of knockout or decision for me, and I think I'll go with knockout, like second round knockout.
We'll talk about Rogerio Bontorin in a little bit more detail. 16-4 record. Notable wins include Harlian Paiva and Magomed Bibulatov. He is, however, winless in his past four, but those some of those losses have aged very well. Obviously, you've got Ray Borg, former title challenger, Brandon Royval, and Kai Kara France, who's going to be fighting for the interim belt. And the Kai fight, in my opinion, showcases the best and the worst of Bontorin because people look at the record, they say, oh, he got knocked out in the first round. People forget he absolutely dominated Kai on the ground for that first 4 minutes, 30 seconds. But Kai was able to get back to his feet and just landed that one big sequence, and Bob's your uncle, game over.
Yeah, hilarious stoppage by our man Herb Dean there too. But it's that standing back take. I mean, the standing back take is a terrible move in MMA. It burns out your legs. If you don't get that choke, your legs are going to be, fucked for the rest of the fight. So that's what happened there. He had the standing back take for multiple minutes, and then, Kai shook him off, and then Bontorin was kind of like dead in the water, just standing there, and he got hit with a big punch, and that was that. So, yeah, his chin is not the greatest as displayed there. And I mean, I feel like you did say that he's winless. He did beat Matt Schnell. Maybe that fight was like overturned for like
Overturned.
yeah, but he won that fight. I mean, he outboxed Schnell over 15 minutes. That was a decent win, but I just feel like this guy hasn't really put together a great win in a while. I mean, the Paiva fight was a quick cut stoppage. The Schnell, I don't think is the highest level fighter. So I feel like I'm picking a cop here with decent confidence, and I'm not too high on Bontorin overall.
I'm going to be leaning the same way. I maybe have a bit more time for Bontorin. I think he's very aggressive, maybe to the point of being reckless. And I think that could cause him problems. I think if he makes it a very grappling heavy fight, he tries to get Manel down, I think he could succeed at some points. I can see him maybe taking a round. But he needs to be very careful when it comes to the stand-up exchanges because Manel is so fast when it comes to his counters. And I could see Bontorin maybe getting a little bit too carried away, coming in, big swinging overhands, and Manel catching him and going down.
Yeah, that sounds right to me. So you thinking knockout here for Cop?
I'm going to say Manel second round. It wouldn't surprise me if Bontorin wins the first.
Yeah, same exact pick. I'm doing second round KO. Um, Maybe actually, you know what? I'll go down just so we're different, just so we have something to battle head to head against. I'll go first round knockout for Cop.
And if Manel was to win, I think Manel's the number 13th ranked flyweight right now, and Bontorin is number 8. So if Manel wins this fight, like flyweight is a really wide open weight class right now. We're seeing a lot of people sticking their flag up and saying, hey, maybe I'm going to be the one to challenge for a belt, say, in the next 12, 18 months. Do we put Manel into this conversation with a win over Bontorin?
Oh yeah, let's do it. Let's give this guy like Brandon Royval. I mean, the cop would send Brandon Royval's head off his body. I mean, I really want to see that fight. I do not like Royval, and Cop is just such an athletic freak that I'm really excited to see some future matchups with this guy.
I would say Manel versus the Moreno versus Kyle loser.
That's not a bad idea as well. That's a big jump though. I mean, he even if he wins this fight, he'll probably jump up to maybe 9, 8, or 9 or something. I mean, these rankings are stupid anyway. But yeah, I mean, yeah, that's not a bad idea. Maybe Askarov too.
Yes, Askarov, a really good call actually, because that's going to test his wrestling big time.
Hmm.
Fight number 3, though, and for a lot of people, I know Ariel Helwani has sort of trademarked this for himself. We're coming to the fight that some people are calling the people's main event. The women's strawweight division, it's Zhang Weili, the number 2 seed, taking on the unranked Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Betting odds for this one has Weili as a minus 170 favourite. Joanna, you can get a plus 150. Now, I want to go back to March 2020 before the world descended into chaos. UFC 248. The core main event strawweight title is on the line, and we have what many consider the greatest fight in women's MMA history. Where were you when that happened, John? What was your opinion watching that fight play out?
That's a good. I was trying to remember this the other day, like where I was watching that unfold. I'm pretty sure I was just, at my house watching it. I was betting Joanna big before the fight. I was adding to her, as the fight was going on. I thought things were going great. Obviously, the head swelling wasn't a good look for Joanna, and then that heartbreaking split decision loss. That'll always hurt there. I still think Joanna deserved to win the fight. I mean, the rounds are close though. The rounds, the way they played out, I mean, I could see a case for Zhang winning 3 rounds. I could see a case for Joanna winning 4 rounds. I mean, the rounds were really, really close. They were all decided by like these small little moments. But to me, I just saw Joanna having the more overall success as the fight went on. And I think that as the fight as a whole, Joanna did win. It's just that crazy swelling on her forehead. Was a bad look for the judges and possibly maybe edged Zhang getting some of those later rounds. But yeah, definitely I think best women's fight of all time. I'm not even sure what number 2 would be. Probably Rose versus Carla too. Honestly, maybe Holly Holm. Maybe Holly Holm versus like Aldana or something as like the third best of all time. But yeah, I feel like it's a little. I feel like what is it, 2 years, 3 months later? I mean, I feel like the window for this rematch is a little bit past us. I don't know if you feel that way as well, Carl, but I mean, I'm still excited to see it. But I mean, if you have an amazing, great fight over 5 rounds, the best 5 round women's fight of all time, we're doing a rematch. Let's make the fight 40% shorter. Whose fucking idea was that? I mean, this fight being 3 rounds is bad. Apparently, I heard rumors that it was Joanna who declined this being 5 rounds. I don't know if it's true or not, but that would be sad to see because I mean, I want to see 2 more rounds of this shit. I mean, it's going the full 3 rounds. That's the spoiler for this one. This one is going the full 3 rounds. These women aren't finishing each other, so I want to see it go the extra 2. But I'm still excited regardless.
I think it's a really intriguing matchup. Obviously, based on the hype of what we saw first time around, there's all the expectation in the world that we could see the same in the rematch. I share the same sentiment as you. I think when you look at the quality of some of the fight night main events that the UFC have been putting out, especially when they're at the apex, and you think, well, Aspen Ladd versus Norma Dumont is worthy of 5 rounds, but Zhang Weili versus Joanna II isn't. You got to think it's not right. It's not right when obviously you want to try and be an entertainment sport as much as you do you want to sort of like raise awareness of other divisions, that sort of thing. But no, Joanna Weili should definitely be 5 rounds.
Yeah, I mean Nick Diaz, Thiago Santos, Jairzinho Rozenstruik, Alexander Volkov. These guys are getting main events, 5 round fights left and right. They gave Nick Diaz, like a 40-year-old, alcoholic. They gave him a 5 round fight not that long ago, and I think they probably did offer this fight to be 5 rounds. I really do think that one of these
Yes.
women turned it down. And like I said, I don't know if this is true or not, but I did hear that it was on Joanna's side. I mean, maybe. Um, maybe she doesn't want to come back for 5 rounds for her first fight in 2 years, and it's the first time Zhang has fought 3 rounds in like 4 or 5 fights, right? I mean, I think her past 4 fights have been title fights, right?
I think the
Yeah,
last
so
one
she
was 235 against Tisha Torres.
yeah, so 3 years since her last 3 round fight. I'm sure she'll, appreciate not having to go the extra, 10 minutes. But, um, the odds for this one, they have Zhang as the favorite, -170, which is like 63, 64%. I mean, so based on their first fight, if you had to say, what was that fight? I don't see how, anybody could say it was more than 55-45 for either woman, right? I mean, even if you could say 50-50 and that'd be fine. I mean, they were pretty evenly matched. Or you could give a slight advantage to one woman. I don't see how you get past 60% for either of these women. I mean, the logic behind that is that Zhang has been active for the past 2 years and Joanna hasn't. So maybe they're thinking that Zhang will, be the fresher fighter. We might see Joanna slow down at this point. But guys, Joanna is a great fighter. I mean, for my money, probably the greatest women's fighter of all time. She's better than, Shevchenko, even though she lost. She's better than Nunes, even though she didn't have as long of a title run. I think Joanna really is the best women's fighter I've ever seen. So I'm not willing to write her off yet. I don't think that she's going to be slowing down yet. And, I still think that they're disrespecting her, having her here as, the 40% underdog.
And good thing you're talking about Joanna as well. We're going to talk about her in a little bit more detail here. You mentioned you think she has a claim as the greatest women's fighter of all time. Here are some of those notable wins in question: Michelle Waterson, Tisha Torres, Jessica Andrade, 2 wins over Claudia Gadelha, Jessica Penne, and a win over the current strawweight champion Carla Esparza, and only loses to sort of like the elite rung of fighters. So Rose Namajunas twice, Valentina Shevchenko, and of course Zhang Weili. But this is a very interesting one because of one of the points you mentioned. Joanna was always known as being quite an active fighter. She would defend the belt every sort of 4 or 5 months. And yet, here she is, near 2.5 year layoff, 34 years old. Are we going to get the same Joanna who was so dominant in that sort of 2015, 2016 run?
Well, I don't think it'll be quite back to that run, the 15, 16 era. But I mean, 2020, she was still an amazing fighter. I mean, she stuffed, I think, all of Zhang's takedowns in that fight. Her takedown defense still looked really good. Her offensive striking was still great. I think she was the better defensive fighter in that fight, and she still had crazy good output and cardio to pump out volume for the full 5 rounds. So in that fight, I didn't see much, if any, slowing down from her from her prime. So it's just a matter of, do you think these 2 years is going to be enough for her to slow down? And considering she hasn't been fighting, she's not taking damage. I'm sure she's she took a long time to recover from like the forehead and everything. I'm not willing to write her off, like I'm saying. On the other side, with Zhang, I think that she did look better, honestly, against Rose the second time. Then I think she's steadily improving as a fighter. Still, obviously, she trained with Cejudo at Fight Ready. I kind of have my doubts on, whether she would show any improvements from that, just because Cejudo doesn't have much experience as a coach. It's obviously a woman and a man. The language barrier. I thought that she wouldn't really have a lot of influence, but she did hit some nice open space takedowns, which I thought was new for her. If you see Zhang's previous fights, she likes really getting against the cage, but getting in the clinch, maybe ripping you down from the clinch or something. But she actually shot some open space takedowns and was able to get Rose down there. So to me, that was a definite improvement that we saw from her time at Fight Ready. And look out for that here. Joanna, classically great takedown defense, but a lot of those takedowns she stuffed in the first fight were against the cage, which is where Joanna is so great at defending takedowns. So look out for Zhang to shoot in open space and maybe catch Joanna by surprise here.
I agree. I can see Weili going very grappling heavy for this one. Obviously, training with Cejudo is going to be a major factor there, and I think Weili could realize, hey, Joanna did cause me a lot of problems in the stand-up. I do think there's a lot of question marks about Weili's striking defense. I think that's one of her big failings as a fighter. So I can see her maybe trying to go a bit more grappling heavy. However, as you mentioned before, Joanna, fantastic takedown defense, and more importantly, she's a fantastic scrambler. If she's gets taken down, she's able to get herself back to her feet. I think the only person who took her down and kept her there was Shevchenko. And we all know how good Shev can be. And also as well, she could afford to try and keep Rose down because Rose is a big guard player. Rose was trying to work for submissions and was more comfortable staying on her back in a way that Joanna maybe isn't. So I think that's a big factor to play into it. One of the big concerns I maybe do have with Weili as well is it was something which was very prominent in her early UFC run. Do you think she's maybe a bit of a weight bully? Like, she does cut a lot of weight for this class. And I think maybe because she thinks, hey, I'm bigger and I'm stronger than these girls, I maybe don't need to rely on defense as much. Because we've seen fighters of a much lower caliber than her cause her problems. I mean, Daniel Taylor rocked her in a UFC debut.
Yeah, I do agree with that. She definitely relies on her athletic attributes a little bit too much, but I mean, that's nothing unique to her. I mean, pretty much all good athletes in MMA, they neglect some area of their game just because they can get away with, they're just insane athleticism. So, I think her defense is a good example of that. She's insanely tough. She did get finished by Rose there, but she does. She ate all of Joanna's shots the first time and seemed insanely durable in that fight. So I think that she, kind of does rely on that. She doesn't have to have the best defense because she knows she can take a ton of punishment and keep coming. So yeah, I wouldn't go as far to say, a weight bully, but I think that, she definitely does have some cheating athletic advantages.
When it comes to classic rematches, in fact, you can put this into any kind of media attribute. There's always a tendency that the sequel doesn't live up to the first one, the classic. What type of fight do you think we're going to get here? Is this going to be The Godfather Part 2, or is this going to be Staying Alive?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be remotely as good as the first fight. I mean, obviously everyone's expectations are going to be high going into it, and I just think that there's no way they can live up to that. And, just the 3 rounds, the Singapore crowd, they might not, I don't know what the audience is going to look like. I don't know if there's going to be, tens of thousands of people there or only a few thousand. So, um I'll be interested to see that. But let me think. I hear like a motorcycle outside. I just know that they're gonna rip by any second. So I'm just like trying to like formulate my thoughts here. Yeah. So I mean, I do think what you said is right. The Zhang's going to be looking to grapple here. She knows the striking didn't go too well in her first fight, and she's going to be looking to grapple really hard here. But if she makes that right change and goes to shoot those open space takedowns, you hear it. You heard that, right, Carl?
I did, yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, yeah. Anyway, if she goes to shoot those open space takedowns, I think that that's a huge benefit for her because Joanna is just, nearly impossible to take down when her back is against the cage. She's so comfortable there. She's stuffed so many takedowns in that type of space. So if she can catch her, maybe catch a kick in open space or shoot a low single leg, a double leg of some sort, I think that, we could see Joanna get stuck on her back in that, the center of the cage. So that's the big adjustment that Zhang needs to make, honestly, is she needs to shoot in the open space instead of against the cage. For Joanna, I think she really needs to just do what she did in the last fight because technically she would have won a split decision if the fight ended after the first round, the first time, the first 3 rounds, she would have won a 29-28 split. But those rounds were close. I mean, I think she's still the better offensive fighter, better defensively as well, just much more experience as a striker, and the striking's going to favor her. So she just needs to avoid that takedown and do what she does, and outstrike Zhang here. So I'll pick Joanna to win, but it's a very hesitant pick. I'm far from confident in her. It will be a 29-28 for either woman, and it's going to be close. And with these fucking judges these days, man, you can never be sure. So, tread lightly if you're betting this one.
I saw you rant about the Jeff Molina fight yesterday.
Yeah, yeah, that was. I mean, honestly, that wasn't the most egregious decision. I bet on Zalgas there. So like, I was particularly upset about that one. It seemed like most people thought that was a bad decision, but it wasn't actually like the worst decision ever.
I'm going to be leaning towards Weili on this one, and I lean for 2 reasons. One, I think that working with Cejudo is going to greatly benefit the grappling game. I can see her going quite wrestling heavy, and even though Joanna does have great takedown defense, that was 2020 Joanna. And I think those 2 years away, 34 years old, there's just too many question marks for me. Pick Joanna to win this one. So I am going to pick Weili to win this one. It's going to be a unanimous decision. And if Joanna was to win this fight, part of the reason why Joanna has been inactive for so long is, firstly, she wants to get paid, which I 100% support, because I think anybody who competes in this sport and suffers the brutality that comes with it should be given what they deserve. But also as well, Joanna has also been quite picky in regards to who she wants to fight. Like, she was quite open in saying, I either want a title match or I want Weili, because I know they wanted to try and do her versus Marina Rodriguez, her versus Mackenzie Dern, and she both turned those down. If Joanna loses this fight, her road to a title is pretty much done. Is that it for Joanna?
I hope not. I mean, I think that she should still come back and go out on a win. I mean, she could beat up a lot of women in the division still. With the way Carla looked in her last fight, I mean, I would favor, Joanna there. So, yeah, I mean, I think she'll still stick around even if she loses.
Yeah. And before we move on to talking about the title fights, we mentioned before there that the expectation is this fight isn't going to live up to how good the Classic was. What is the most disappointing UFC rematch of all time?
Rose versus Carla II.
Well, I was thinking more in terms of like the first fight being such an amazing fight and the sequel not living up to it.
Yeah.
Because Rose Carla 1 was just pretty much Carla wrestling and then getting the sub.
That's a good question. I don't know. What is your pick? You probably have one in mind.
There's a couple that come to mind. I think Jones versus Gus was underwhelming. 232. Mark Hunt versus Bigfoot, but that was like post TRT Bigfoot, nowhere near as competitive. Griffin versus Bonner. There was a big gulf in quality between the two when they fought second time around. So that would probably be my top three.
Those are some good ones. Yeah, I feel like there's one in a little more recent memory, but I'm not remembering what it was. I'm just excited for the Derek Lewis and Ngannou rematch that'll happen inevitably one day.
You never know. Let's see if Francis re-signs with the UFC. Co-main event time now, and we're going to the women's flyweight division. Valentina Shevchenko is back in action, and she's going to be taking on the number 4 seed Taila Santos. Betting odds for this one, very interesting. Shevchenko is minus 720. You can get Taila Santos at plus 500. Now, even though that gap is quite wide, it is the closest gap between Shevchenko's opponents since the Joanna fight, where she was a minus 300 favourite. The INC voters, they are keeping their support, however. Shevchenko, 94% to win this one. Taila Santos just getting 6% of the votes. Before we talk about the fight itself, though, I want to use this opportunity to sort of bring up some concerns that I have with the UFC and in terms of their promotion when it comes to fighters. There is a reason behind this, don't worry. I think on the whole, the UFC are very good at marketing their stars. If they see somebody who they think could be a big name, they can go the whole hog to make them feel like a big star. However, if you don't play the media game and you're in sort of like an unfashionable weight class, they don't even try. And I bring this up in regards to Taila Santos because Taila, in my opinion, poses the biggest threat to Shevchenko out of any of her title defenses. She's long for the weight class. She carries a lot of power. I mean, she's 19-1, so she's shown that she has a lot of quality that goes with that record. But outside of the hardcore fans who watch these sort of preview shows, nobody knows who she is. So how can you expect the Bob and Bettys of the world, who sort of pick and choose which cards they get invested in, how can you expect them to pay attention when they've made no attempt to try and make a big deal out of her opponent? I mean, Tyler's career was pretty much played out on Fight Night prelims, and now she's fighting for a belt.
Yeah, I mean, I disagree with the UFC building up the stars. I mean, that they don't. I think they do a pretty bad job, honestly. I mean, sure, Sean O'Malley gets like a promo or something like that, but I mean, I don't think they know how to spot talent at all. I mean, Marlon Vera, finished O'Malley in the first round, and then we still see O'Malley getting more promotional push while he's beaten nobody impressive yet. while O'Malley just continues to, or I mean, Vera continues to rack up good wins, and is finally getting some of the recognition he deserves. But I don't know. I mean, it's a pretty impossible task for them to ask to market Santos. I mean, nobody cares about Shevchenko. I mean, she's just one of the worst things to ever happen to the sport, in my opinion. Just nobody cares. I mean, her fights are terrible. Boring personality. The whole division is worse because of her, honestly. So sure, Santos, nobody knows who she was, but nobody cares who she is either, because these fights, they just churn out the next one, the next contender. Oh, Lauren Murphy. Oh, Jennifer Maia. Those women have no chance. But yeah, I mean, Santos does have a better chance than those past few women I mentioned. You did make one little mistake, though. You said the closest odds, the Andrade odds were actually a little bit closer than they are now. Andrade was about a 4-1 favorite just last year, so this is they're giving Santos a better shot. And the INC Live listeners, y'all are tripping. 6% for Santos. I mean, that you got to give her a little bit better chance than that. I mean, I think it's more like, I don't know, 15%, maybe 20%. I mean, Santos, she takes women down. She's a good wrestler. She's a strong, athletic woman, and she takes women down. Where have we seen Shevchenko looked susceptible lately? The Jennifer Maia fight, where she got taken down and put on bottom and lost that rounds. And you got to think that if any way that Shevchenko loses a fight, it's going to be a strong wrestler who can take her down, and that's what Santos is. So I feel like people just have no idea who Santos is. Not only do they have no idea who she is, they have no idea how she fights. They have no idea that she's a strong wrestler. So people need to do a little research before writing her off in this one.
Which plays into some of the concerns I have with the UFC, that they haven't done a good enough job painting this woman as a viable threat, which in my opinion she is, because as you mentioned before, very strong wrestler. She's openly admitted that she's going to want to gravel with Shevchenko. And as I sort of teased there before, she does carry a lot of power. She dropped Roxanne, she dropped Joanne Calderwood, and yes, maybe both of those fighters may be on the wane a little bit past their prime, but she was able to get them down. I do think there are a lot of attributes here to look for with Taila Santos, and she can pose a threat. The one big thing, that sort of big blemish that comes with Taila Santos, she is 19-1. We need to talk about the one. The only loss of her career came on a UFC debut, February 2019, against Mara Borella. What did you see from Taila in that fight that you could point to and say she lost because of that reason?
I have no recollection of that fight. I remember, taping and watching it years and years ago. I thought I remember it kind of being like a robbery. I don't remember though. I think she got stuck on, like, she got taken down and she got stuck on bottom for a long time. Um, I don't know. I guess yeah. So Barella controlled her for 6 minutes with two takedowns in that fight. So it was a split decision, though. It could have gone either way. I mean, UFC debut. Who really knows what the deal was there? But I think that since then she's had some good wins. Honestly, McCann is not a bad win. Robertson's a solid win. Roxanne, not so much. And Joanne, the way she made easy work of Wood there was pretty impressive. So. I don't know. I disagree with you a little bit on like the building her up, because if they put Santos on a big spot in a pay per view or something, I would complain because she doesn't deserve to be there. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's what Shevchenko is. She's a co-main event champion, and then her fighters or her opponents come straight from the prelims, and nobody gives a shit. So, that'll never change. No matter what Shevchenko does, it'll never ever change. The only thing that she can do is retire and put us all out of our misery. So let's hope that happens sooner than later. I'm picking Santos. Let's do it. Let's do it, Carl. Santos for the upset. She will wrestle her way to a victory here, and it'll be glorious. Hopefully, they don't offer Shevchenko a rematch, and they just, tell her to enjoy retirement.
You know how people always used to give me grief for the way I talked about Nunes? This is sort of like the
Yeah,
same thing with Shevchenko with you.
yeah. I mean, we're a Joanna fucking channel over here. We except for Carl, who's picking against her like a coward. But he's the communist veins are no, just kidding, just kidding. We can't make that joke. Can't make that joke. Yeah, so I'm picking Santos, Carl. I'm doing it.
Well, we'll talk about Valentina, which I know you're sort of cringing at the thought of it. 22-3 record. This will be her 7th title defense. So if she was to win this one, she would break Ronda's record for the most defenses in one weight class. And her notable wins include Andrade, Chukagian, Carmouche, who of course Bellator flyweight champion now, Joanna, Holly Holm, Sarah Kaufman, and Juliana Pena, the current bantamweight champion. Unbeaten as a flyweight, Oliver Luss has succumbed at 135. But we are dealing with a fighter, though, who is now 34 years old, has nearly 20 years worth of combat sports underneath her. Father Time is, of course, unbeaten. Glover Teixeira has been putting up a really good fight in that regard, though. But as good as Shevchenko has been, and as good as she looked against Lauren Murphy, another sort of clinical job-done performance, can she keep that up?
Yeah, I don't have too much concern about Shevchenko slowing down. I don't think there's much evidence to suggest it, so there's not much point in speculating on it either. Um, I'll never forgive her what she did to my girl Caitlin Chukagian. I mean, I love Chukagian, and Shevchenko did throw a beat down on her, so that's part of the reason why I dislike her. I also am just terrible at picking Shevchenko fights, how they're going to end. I never know what round or how she's going to do it. I'll pick submission and then she'll knock her out. I'll pick decision and then it'll be a finish. I don't know how to do it. But this one I think is going to be accurate. Taila Santos decision. Not sure if she'll win every single round. I think it could be just like 5 takedowns and that's a wrap. But yeah, I got to stick with it. I already bet on her at plus 500. Yeah, I mean, she seems like as capable as a woman as we're gonna get, so we might as well put our faith in her.
I do have a couple of issues when it comes to Taila Santos based on what I've seen. I think when it comes to the striking, she does like to move forward in straight lines. Like, I am coming forward, I am going to attack. She doesn't really sort of move to the side or sort of set up angles in the way that you maybe ideally do for this sort of elite level of women's flyweight. I don't think her ground game was all that secure when she fought Mara Borella. Borella seemed to control her very well. And Mara, in my opinion, isn't really she's not the most physically imposing fighter in that weight class, in my opinion. And yeah, and she does have a tendency to loop her shots. When she does get a bit carried away, the big overhands start coming in. And Shevchenko, who can be just sort of like pinpoint bullets, shoot you down, she could thrive if Taila started winging it a bit. Just quick counter strike and then just sort of point fighting you out. I can see a lot of grappling in this fight. I think there's a lot of comparisons frame-wise between Taila and Caitlin Chukagian. And Shevchenko turned that into a grappling match. Managed to get crucifix and finish it off. I think if Shevchenko's going to win it, I can see it maybe being done in the grappling exchanges. I think to play it safe, you will go with Shevchenko to win this one. But I will add this sort of prefix. I think Shevchenko is a fantastic fighter, worthy of a lot of the praise that she gets from fans and the UFC. But I do think her time as champion is a lot closer to ending than what people think it is. But partly because, obviously, 34 years old, she's going to start slowing down. But also, this run of flyweight fighters she's going to be facing are very, very good. Not only do you have Taila Santos, but you also have Erin Blanchfield, good win for her last night. You have Manon Fiorot, who I am very high on. Casey O'Neill. You've got some really talented girls coming to the fore. And I think Shevchenko's skill set will be able to keep her there for a little bit longer. But the division is coming very, very close to passing her by.
Yeah, and we have to start talking about how many more fights can the UFC promote on her before like just losing interest. I mean, seriously, she should probably be like the first fight on like the road to the UFC, like the prelims of the road to the UFC. They should put Shevchenko there, like stream it on like Vimeo or something like that, because you can't be putting her on pay-per-views. You just can't. I refuse to say anything positive about Shevchenko, and Brazil will win another championship here, so that'll be exciting. I'm really looking forward to it.
I think the UFC, to their credit, I think they are using Shevchenko in the best way. Like, they recognize, hey, Shevchenko is not, like, she's not interesting enough to be a sort of pay-per-view A side. and her weight class isn't strong enough to do it either. But using her to sort of, like, if they use her the way they are doing, which is sort of like, if you have a champion where there are some question marks over how big their show is going to be, you put Shevchenko in the co-main, and you turn what could be an uninteresting title fight in a weak weight class, and now you've got two of them. So you've got two title fights on the card and a marquee matchup with that. That's the best way to use Shevchenko, in my opinion. I think it's a much more sensible way of doing it than what they've done with, say, Nunes, for example, where they're trying to force her to be a pay-per-view A-side, even though the numbers are saying otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I would disagree. I think they did the best when they put her on Carmouche. They made it like a ESPN Plus main event, because I mean, I think putting her on the co-main event of a pay-per-view just kills most of the momentum. I mean, it's just an immediate turnoff for anybody watching the pay-per-view, in my opinion. I guess thank God she's not a main event. At least they spare us that. But putting her in the co-main event just kills the vibe. And yeah, that's about it. That's all I got to say.
I'll end with this final question. If Taila Santos, you're going very high on the Taila Santos to win game. All credit to you for that. If not Taila Santos, who will be the one to dethrone Shevchenko?
Man, what a loaded question. I mean, I like Fierro. I hope, maybe Fierro could do it. I think Chukagan would definitely win a rematch. Her chances would be somewhere in between like 99 and 100% to beat Shevchenko in a rematch. Yeah, I think really any woman against Shevchenko would win at this point. I mean, I think if we gave Lauren Murphy another chance, she'd probably get the job done. So, yeah, any warm body against Shevchenko, I think will win at this point.
Are you just trolling now?
Oh, yeah, completely.
On that note, we will move on to our main event. Main event time now, and Glover Teixeira will be making the first defense of his light heavyweight title, but he faces a very, very dangerous opponent in the process. The number 2 seed, Jiri Prochazka. Betting odds for this one, Jiri is a -195 favourite. You can get Glover in at +165. INC voters, very similar way. Jiri Prochazka 67% to win, Glover Teixeira 33%. Now, John, it's fairly safe to say that the UFC fan base is quite divided on a lot of things. You talk about any sort of subject and they're almost at loggerheads with one another. If there's one thing that really united fans in the back end of 2021, it was Glover Teixeira winning the light heavyweight title, 42 years old, against Jan Blachowicz, UFC 267. Where were you when that happened? Because honestly, it was one of those great feel-good MMA moments that don't come around all that often.
Yeah, I mean, I was, watching the pay-per-view at home as always, and I mean, I was shocked, honestly. I thought, stupidly, very stupidly, picked Jan to win the fight, and thought his takedown defense would hold up better. I mean, Glover just ran through and made it look easy. So obviously, I agree, feel-good moment of the year probably. Everybody loves, I think, both these guys. I mean, both of these guys are super likable. This is an amazing fight. I've been talking a lot of negativity about this card, right? But first, I think what I'll say is Jack Della, great. I think great idea putting him on the first fight on the main card. Bontorin Kape, that's a good fight. Zhang and Joanna, good fight. And then this fight is, amazing. 10 out of 10. Doesn't get any better. You got a brand new matchup. You got the fan favorite Glover as the champ defending his belt. You got the new killer Jiri, who's been knocking dudes out as the challenger, and it's just a perfect fight. Honestly, I mean, I can't wait for this fight. It's it's very rare that we're getting like a new title fight in men's MMA these days for the UFC. We're getting a lot of rematches, but this one, I mean, a very original matchup. Can't wait to see it, and it's an amazing fight. That's what I'll start with.
And it comes at a very interesting time for the light heavyweight division, because obviously Jon Jones vacated the title and there was pretty much a void left in his absence. And we've seen the new guard, which have still been very impressive, but they haven't properly filled that gap yet. You've got guys like Jiri, Ankalaev, Alexander Rakic, who certainly have a lot of potential. I'll add Jamal Hill in there as well. You've got guys who have a lot of potential, but they're not ingrained as stars yet. Is light heavyweight a good weight class right now? Is Glover the beneficiary of things just being a little bit weaker than what they normally are?
Oh, it's definitely not good. It's not good. Um, I mean, no, not good. But I just think that all heavier fighters, I mean, pretty much once you get north of 170, the quality of the divisions just absolutely plummets, like a straight line down in quality once you go past 170. So I don't think it's good. It's interesting, it's fun, but I mean the skill level. I mean these guys are still old, big, slow guys, and I mean Glover, it's fun that Glover's a champion, but with the fact that you have a 42-year-old who gets knocked out and comes back in every fight as the champion just kind of shows where the division's at. But make no mistake, John Jones wouldn't make it any better. That dude is washed as the old laundry. I mean, he's not coming back. He's not fighting in the UFC again, so no need to keep mentioning him.
We'll mention then Glover Teixeira, 33-7 record. As mentioned before, 42 years old, the second oldest champion in UFC history. Number one is Randy Couture, 43 years old, when he beat Tim Sylvia at UFC 68. And if you had to point to one thing that sort of brought about this transformation in Glover Teixeira, if you looked at Glover's early UFC run, when he was sort of like knocking people out left, right, and centre, challenged John Jones for the belt, with many people believing this big one-shot Brazilian is just going to plow Jones and end up taking the belt and the reign of terror. And now he's almost exclusively a grappler. And this grappling prowess is really catching a lot of people in this weight class off guard.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a great necessary change. I mean, when you're old like that, 40 plus, I mean, the striking, the reactions just aren't going to be there. So you have to, make do and, go back to the roots. And he, fortunate for him, has, a great grappling game, good takedowns, extremely heavy on top, can finish fights really efficiently once he gets on top. And it's just so happens to be like the perfect, plan B for the light heavyweight division because none of these guys can defend a takedown apparently. And once Glover gets on top of him, he absolutely smushes them. So, just incredible stuff that he's been able to do this for this long. But unfortunately for him, he's got a death-defying menace in front of him this weekend, and I'll let you segue that into your Jiri introduction there, Carl.
Yes, Jiri Prochazka, 28-3 record. He's on a fantastic winning streak as well. Notable wins, including his time in Ryzen. You got people like Dominic Reyes and Volkan Oezdemir in the UFC. You go into Ryzen, he's beaten the likes of CB Dollaway, Fabio Maldonado, Brandon Halsey, former Bellator champion, King Mo Lawal, and I was surprised this fight actually happened. Kazuyuki Fujita. Fujita was still fighting and ended up fighting Jiri Prochazka right to the end of his career.
That's some cruel shit right there.
That's Japanese MMA for you. Obviously, former Ryzen light heavyweight champion, and I will add this sort of prefix though when it comes to Yuri's time in Ryzen because one of my best friends, Uncle Joey MMA, I recommend you look him up on Twitter. He is really big when it comes to the Japanese promotions. So obviously, I asked him in regards to Glover's fighting style, what's Yuri's ground game like? And he said one word: limited.
Yeah, I thought he was gonna say bad. Yeah, I mean the fight to look at is the Carl Albrechtsen fight from Ryzen back in it was almost 5 years ago. Um, and he did get taken down. He spent a lot of time on bottom in that fight. Actually, Mo the Wall took him down too, way back in like 2015, their
And I think
first
Halsey
fight.
did as well.
Yeah, so I mean, he can be taken down. I mean, he's definitely not like a good defensive grappler. His takedown defense is not good, and once he gets on bottom, he can get stuck there for multiple minutes. But um, he's insanely athletic. He's going to be hard to hold down. He knows how to get back up to his feet, and it's really going to be a matter of can Jiri kill Glover before Glover takes him down? Because to me, it seems like the first few punches that Jiri lands are going to really wobble and hurt Glover. And the first takedown that Glover gets, he's probably going to get really dominant positions and be liable for a finish. And I just think that one of these guys is finishing each other by it's either Jiri knockout or Glover sub within 2 rounds. I really don't see this one getting into the third round. I think it could only last a few minutes, which is, a little unfortunate just because it's such an exciting fight. You'd like to see it play out a little bit more. But with how explosive these guys are and how great finishers they are, I just think it's destined to end either by Jiri bonking him or Teixeira subbing him. So, not too original analysis there. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's the consensus opinion by everyone. It's just a matter of which outcome you're going to settle on. Is it the Jiri knockout or is it the Glover sub?
I do have some big concerns for Glover early in the fight because if you look at Glover's run to the belt, nearly every fight follows the same sort of template. He ends up getting rocked very early in the fight, gets on top position, and ends up managing to either ground and pound or sub his way to the win. We saw it against Thiago Santos, we saw it against Kutalaba, we saw it against Carl Roberson. So these sort of lower level guys were causing Glover a lot of problems very early on in their fights. Anthony Smith as well. And there's only so many times that you can get away with just barely surviving and ending up on top. That looks going to run out at some point. And at 42 years old, there's always going to be that question mark.
Yeah, that is exactly right. I mean, Roberson had him nearly knocked out with those Travis Brown elbows. Kutalaba stuffed like 7 or 8 takedowns before inevitably getting taken down. Krylov was a back and forth grappling fight. Smith had him hurt bad in the first 2 rounds. Santos dropped him in the first 2 rounds. It wasn't until he actually won the belt where he won a fight without any resistance. I mean, he ran through Jan Blachowicz with no resistance whatsoever and made it look easy. I mean, he was a 2-1 underdog in that fight, and he looked like a 4-1 favorite. So I mean, he ran through Jan there, and he's gonna be in another tough matchup here, though. I mean, just the speed advantage, the power advantage for Jiri is going to be so much to overcome. I mean, just Jiri has very sporadic movement. He's always kind of darting in and out and jumping and throwing flying knees and kicks and punches from all these angles. I feel like that is a really good strategy to fluster Glover and to hit him with some unorthodox shots. Kind of like Thiago Santos did. You saw Santos when they got in close, he would wing those big looping hooks or overhands, and he would be able to clip Glover in those exchanges. And I think that Jiri's athleticism and his unorthodox kind of angles he comes from are going to be hard for Glover to anticipate.
Yuri's striking is a little bit porous. And we even saw Dominic Reyes causing him a lot of problems. That was like a fight of the year contender. People forget how good that fight was. Obviously, Glover maybe doesn't rely as much on his striking as he did back in his prime. But can he maybe see some openings in a stand-up battle? Can he maybe... Because he still has that power. He still rocked Jan Blachowicz to set up one of his takedowns.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I mean, it's possible. But I mean, I think just the speed advantage and the other thing though is Yuri's insanely durable. I mean,
Yes.
Reyes landed straight left hands straight to the chin, and this dude wasn't even taking. Was taking them with ease. Yuri has shown susceptibility to leg kicks a lot, but Glover's not doing that.
No.
So I mean, I think that say they're exchanging a few punches. I just feel like if Glover really tries to connect on the chin of Jiri, he's just going to leave himself open, and he's at such a durability disadvantage that that any time for him exchanging in the pocket is not time well spent.
Glover's mentioned, we saw his interview with Room Service Diaries, Luke Thomas and Brian Campbell. They did an interview with him, and he did mention that he is looking to retire either with the belt or without later this year. Do you think maybe mentally having one foot out the door might affect how he approaches this fight?
I don't think so because this guy's probably had one foot out the door for like 5 years now. Honestly, like seriously, he lost like multiple. I'd say after the Gustafson fight, he probably really started contemplating retirement, and then he went on to go 6-1 and be the champion since then. So I feel like he's had his foot out the door for a while now, and it really hasn't slowed him down. So I see no reason to suggest that it will now.
So, put your money where your mouth is. Who's winning this one and how?
Jiri knockout round 1. Sad to say it. Glover. I mean, I picked against Glover last time, but you know, obviously, I neglected to realize that Jan Blachowicz hasn't improved his takedown defense at all. But Jan he's slow. His feet are very, very planted. He doesn't move very well. Jiri is agile. He's fast. He's in and out. He's quick. He's powerful. He's durable. I mean, he's got all the tools to make this a really nasty fight on the feet. Obviously, if he gets taken down, it's probably going to be a wrap from then on. But I just trust Jiri to hit him with some shit before he gets taken down and to knock him out.
I would say to play it safe, go with Jiri and go by knockout. But what I will say is this: if I was to look at this sort of new generation of light heavyweight fighters coming through, Ankalaev, Rakic, Jamal Hill, that sort of thing, if I had to choose one guy who I think Glover has the best chance of beating, it is Jiri, because I have so many question marks about his ground game.
Yeah, that is true. But I mean, I don't know. I feel like at this point, I'd probably pick Ankalaev. I'd probably pick Jiri. I might even pick Anthony Smith in a rematch against Glover, honestly. So I mean, I hate to be even remotely disrespecting the legend Glover here, but I got to go with what is he? Czech Republic, Czechoslovakian or something? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to go with the Czech here. Jiri, this guy is. I wonder if he's gonna have the hair. Will he have the hairpiece in? Because that'll be a big factor. If he's got the hairpiece in, there's no fucking way he's losing. But like you brought up a great point. Jiri versus Reyes, one of the best fights of all last year. If you guys haven't rewatched it lately, go rewatch that shit.
And good point as well, bringing up Czech MMA, because this is a country which has started slowly embracing the sport. I think all of that sort of like Central European countries is starting to really get into MMA. Like Jiri winning that belt, that would be big for them.
What is your pick for the? Did you pick which round are you going with for Jiri knockout?
I'm afraid to say I'm going to say first round. But what I will say is, I think the longer the fight goes, the more I favor Glover.
Yeah. And then I'll go under 2 minutes for the Jiri knockout. You get over 2 minutes. How about that?
Yes, I'll take that deal.
Okay, so we have something to go back on next week. If I got Jack, you got Emeev, we both got Kape. I have round 1, you have round 2. I have Joanna, you have Zhang. I have Santos, you have Shev, and then I have the first 2 minutes knockout for Jiri. You have the second 3 minutes.
Sounds like a great plan. And obviously, when it comes to us doing the UFC 276 preview show, we'll be assessing those bets and seeing which one of us came out on top.
Looking forward to it. Thanks for having me as always, my man. It's always fun to talk fights with you.
It's been an absolute pleasure, John, and thank you very much for joining us, and thank you very much as well to you at home for tuning in. We absolutely love doing these preview shows, talking the fights with John, maybe ruffling up a few feathers, but that comes normally when it comes to anyone who follows the channel knows that. I want to say a big thank you to everybody who has been supporting INC Live and supporting the main channel, It's Not Cagefighting, as well. And if you would like to support us on the channel, it's patreon.com/It's Not Cagefighting. You can also follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/INCagefighting. John, of course, will be covering all of the fights in plenty more detail. And where's the best place to do that, John?
You can follow me on Twitter at UFO_UFC, UFO_UFC, or search me up on YouTube, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify at Martian MMA.
John, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much once again for you to tune in. Obviously, we're going to be back next month when it comes to UFC 276. International Fight Week. Israel Adesanya will be taking on Jared Cannonier. Max Holloway versus Alex Volkanovski 3. That's going to be the co-main for that one. And also as well, please make sure you tune into everything that we do here on INC Live. Joe Neal has once again been very busy. He's done the post-fight recap for the Volkov versus Voice and Strike Fight Night main event. He's also going to be invading the main channel as well. He'll be doing a retro review, quite appropriately, on UFC 68. See how 43-year-old Randy Couture ended up winning the UFC heavyweight title. But now though, this has been INC Live. My name's been Karl Bainbridge. That's been John Martian.
Peace out.
And we'll hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye for now.